Hello and welcome everybody out there in Union Arena Land. I have a very special little video for you today. We are going to be discussing the rare battle format for Fullmetal Alchemist. So, I originally thought that I was going to go through each of the decks and go over the pros and cons of why you should or shouldn't play either one of them at the event. And I came to the conclusion that FMA may very well be the only format for rare battles where there's not a wrong decision for the deck to pick. Each of the decks in FMA are relatively the same power level and have good pros and cons against one another. Now, on the surface, Roy and Riza is probably the most powerful deck out of all of them, right? Everybody's fully aware of how strong this deck is at this point. Everybody knows why it's so powerful. Everybody knows that Roy is one of the best removals in the game, and if you can't answer it, is going to remain as one of those. However, FMA has a very unique feature to it where many of the cards are bigger than 4K that you put on the front line. Therefore, Roy has to allocate additional resources to removing them and can starve it. So if you play tactically and intelligently, you should be able to beat them with any of the four decks that I have here, one of which being itself. So, the format itself, I think, is going to be deprived or composed of four different decks. The primary deck that the majority of people are going to be taking is Roy. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, Roy Mustang is one of the most terrifying cards printed in UA for at least NA. On play, you draw a card. If you have no cards in hand, he has impact. And when he attacks, you can place any number of your cards from your hand into your sideline. If you do, kill something that has 1k BP plus the number of cards you just got rid of, or smaller. And you can do one additional card to remove that card from the game. That is a very important line of text in the rare battles itself. There are a lot of cards that have win sideline abilities that you don't want to give to your opponent when you're trying to kill them. That is why Roy is going to be additionally starved of cards in his hand, because in a FMA format, Roy is kind of very powerful, but he's not necessarily the best deck. There's hard counters to him. This is going to be the blanket one that everybody has to be aware of, everybody has to be afraid of. Now, there's different variants that don't run the Edwards. There's different variants that may include some different swappings of numbers of your zeros and ones, whatever have you. More or less, be aware of this deck, be aware that it's going to be coming down, and if you want to take this to rare battles, I mean, it's pretty fantastic for it. It's going to be a very powerful deck, very consistent deck that, unless your opponent is running the intelligent tech pieces that can take you on, or playing any of the decks that have the win sideline abilities that are going to be very difficult for you to remove, it's going to be a battle of wits, let's just say. If you're newer, don't bother just picking up this deck and expecting to win. You're not going to be able to win with it. Sorry, this is a deck that has a skill floor and a skill ceiling. You need to have allocated time into those resources to be able to learn it. However, that is not necessarily the only deck. There is another blue deck that I think in the rare battle format is going to be really good, and that is Big Briggs Energy with a soft splash of Roy. So shout out to UA players. Both of them, the people who run that channel, were second place and I think sixth or seventh place at Gen Con. And they showed off a video recently of Jane piloting this deck. And oh boy, did that look good to me. And I just tried it at my locals, and yeah, Roy in the Briggs deck feels amazing. We're playing literally every Briggs card that you can because you just have to. You're an affinity style deck in order to do that. And then just the threat of drawing additional cards and then dropping Roy is terrifying enough. Now, one of the things that this deck has over the Roy and Rizza deck is you don't have to wait for your opponent to play things to react to them and start taking over the board. You have giant threats and explosive turns and a lot of decent card filtering in addition to that. You have this Louis Armstrong, which means your opponent needs 5k BP kills in order to kill him. That is pretty darn hard to get without comboing Rizzas, and if you're allocating that many resources to it, again, you're starving your opponent. Yes, he has 2 actions to play, but this card is a freight train powerhouse. Not to mention the card advantage you inevitably gain because your opponent can't take double damage forever. He's going to be insane. And if you're unaware, Olivier, She has a fantastic ability that on play, you switch all Briggs affinity cards to active on your field. That means your Sight, that means your Buccaneer, all of your little Briggs get switched into active when you play her, meaning you can just play some things to the front line, raid her, untap everything, smash into your opponent, good to go, good to slam, good to win. She does not restand Louis. He is not Briggs. However, she does have more text. When she attacks, you can sideline a card in order to restand somebody who has 2 original AP. So if you already played Louis, then you raid her after, like played Louis one turn, next turn, raid Olivier. You can swing Louis. More than likely, they're taking the double damage. Let's pretend they don't hit a special here. You swing Olivier, discard a card, restand Louis. They're going to be blocking Louis that second time. You're drawing 2 cards and removing whatever they're blocking with. Now, he is going to be a powerhouse that's very dangerous to deal with. Bucky is another card that can kind of stonewall the Roy and Rizza deck. You can active main, make him a 5k impactor, so he's getting that damage in. Do your restand shenanigans with Olivier, but he remains a 5k during your opponent's next turn. You lose him at the end of that turn, but you can at least go, you're not getting through this unless you dedicate resources to removing him. That is very good for saving you, considering Roy and Rizza's biggest strength is the amount of impact that they get. You have a lot of AP advantage with the Oliviers. You have good search potential with the Oliviers. You have a draw discarder with Vato. You have all of the double energy you need because Miles and Fort Briggs. Fort Briggs is your card advantage with Olivier. Yes, it counts itself when you play it. All in all, I think this is a very good, very competitive deck that, other than what I think is going to be the best FMA deck, is going to be a powerhouse in the format. Now, the third deck, this is going to be kind of iffy how good it is. So this is a King and Kimley and Envy deck. Now, you're playing the traditional King and Kimley package with the Prides. You know, this card is an insane finisher on the backline against your opponent. You get the removal potential of 3Ks with Kimley, combinations with King Bradley to be able to do 4Ks. You have the 3-cost King Bradley to say your yellow color triggers and your special color triggers are not going to be interacting with one of my things. It is another deck that has a little bit of a skill floor, but it is a very rewarding deck to have that in the rare battle format. Now, this is not my King and Kimley deck specifically. My King and Kimley deck plays completely differently, but I think in a format that is only FMA, Envy is an insanely good card. Now, when played, guaranteed impact, meaning end game, you can push through that extra damage with him. You have the Pride impactors, the Envy impactors, and the Kimley impactors, all of which are fantastic cards. Now, when you combine all of that with his ability to draw a discard on attack, you're also looking at card advantage, filtering happening. His win sideline is the part where I think this really allows the deck to pop off and become terrifying. You get to rest one of your opponent's cards. So against the Briggs deck, they have to swing with their double energy first. You chump with Envy, you tap down to their Olivier, you just saved yourself 2 attacks coming your way. Envy is going to be obscene into that deck. And not to mention against Roy, they know this is coming. If they're trying to push a lot of damage, they're going to have to remove Envy. And if they don't discard an additional card, he gets to rest something as well. Meaning you're starving them of even more resources to have them remove him from the game. Now, one other thing about this deck that I think is very important is he only gains impact when played. He has that horrible line that Code Geass got all over the place and honestly made me love this deck so much more. However, Pride, you can sideline either a Kimley or something with 4 or more required energy. You can sacrifice the Envy, rest one of their characters, giving this Pride 5k impact drawing a card, and if you can combine that with a King raid or a Kimley raid, you are getting a lot of attacks in against a lot of decks that don't have a tremendous amount of active triggers in this format. So, really good synergy, really big combo, really, really strong deck all in all. I think this is going to be a very good contender in the rare battle format. If you know your locals and people are playing nothing but Roy, this deck is going to do really well into them. But not, unfortunately, as well as the best deck in that format. I am going to shout this to the heavens. This is the best deck in the rare battle format. If you don't brick, holy cow, is it hard for your opponent to keep up with the card advantage. Now, Greedward is a deck that I've been funking around with for a while now. It is so incredibly fun. The advantage of this deck is that you get to play the typical Ed cards that give you a lot of card filtering, a lot of buffing of the AP and additional energy generation, a lot of card filtering with this card. You have all of these amazing cards at your disposal that just filters through your deck very quickly. And then you combine that with the color trigger Ling, which gives you card advantage, and in a lot of niche situations, a good way to end the game out against your opponent when they're not really anticipating it. And then this guy. He is going to be the biggest threat in the format. 5K while he is rated. Not on my turn, not on your turn, just 5K. That is terrifying. That means Roy has to allocate 4 resources in order to get rid of him when it attacks. And even if he does that, you have the win sideline to discard a card and get back a Ling. So if this is the card that's underneath him, or you discard him because you rated on the 0-drop to get this guy back, you're generating even more card advantage. And then you lose a 5K to potentially draw a card and now also have a 4K. That's a really big winning strategy against Roy. So they have to remove him, which means they have to allocate 5 resources. Now, I'm saying resources because it's not necessarily 5 cards that they get rid of. Of course, they can go, here's a Rizza, raid the Rizza. After you just did your greed stuff, he's now only a 3K. Roy now has to dish 3 cards to get rid of him permanently. That's still a lot more than most decks have to deal with this card. And the thing is, they kind of have to do that, right? He's a terrifying threat to be dealing with, and he's a 5K body that, other than your active trigger 4-drop Roy, you're not really getting through him. He's just a brick wall to deal with. So he's going to be the biggest equalizer in the format. Not to mention, if you play Alex Louis Armstrong against him, he's only a 4.5K. That's a free block every turn. I'm okay with that. And they don't draw the cards because they didn't win the combat. But yeah, that in tandem with the Searcher Ed, you're going to have the most raiders out of everybody played off of life from your hand, searched out, and then played again. It is a fantastic deck in the rare battle format. And in all honesty, this is probably what I'm going to be taking into rare battles as well, as soon as I have time to actually show up to them. But I think that's going to be everything from me. Thank you all very much. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And look down in the description below for any of these fantastic deck lists. They'll be linked down there. Goodbye.